afternoon to everyone. I am the co-founder of Khaana Chahiye. We work towards eliminating hunger in Mumbai. More about that later. But before I begin, shout out to my colleagues Swaraj Shetty, my co-founder Ruben, Khaana Chahiye with me, and Yash Bhadia, who is very much key in running our ground operations. When Bala reached out to me, and us rather, at Khaana Chahiye, I was honestly a little confused. But I think because I touched base with him, and I think I've been able to formulate a lot of my failures. So while I found some very interesting comments being made, some people had specific failures, some people did not have failures. I think I had lots of failures of different types. So I'll start. I was born, bred and jammed in Juhu in Mumbai. I'm a Bombay boy. My dad was working in Maersk, which is a container freight company. My mother was a sociologist and a homemaker. I went to St. Joseph's High School, a normal aided school. We paid 1 rupee for 1 year, 2 rupees for the next, and so on and so forth. Normal government aided school in Juhu. Post that, I joined St. Xavier's College, which was really an eye-opener into the way the world is, the injustice in the world, and the fact that you should do something about it. Subsequent to that, I studied engineering. Again, engineering was bits of ups and downs, but I finally managed to get into St. Francis Institute of Technology in Mumbai. I did my engineering in IT. And thereafter, my career graph has basically spanned two trajectories. On the corporate side of things, I joined CMS, an IT company, and I was the youngest project manager out there, so my growth was really steep. And after 8 years of being in an IT company, I had the standard burnout. At that point in time, my expertise lied in post-implementation, customization, and enhancement of ERPs. And after 8 years of basically being in a typical corporate, I then took a break, consulted the Dosti Group, set up their IT here. And suppose that was my first entrepreneurial plunge, which failed. But it was a Bill Gates funded entity called SERVE, where we were working to make domestic workers financially independent and debt free. The fact that everybody was caught into a repeated debt trap. And while that was happening, we again had to sort of retrench and again go back to our drawing board. And then COVID happened, and then Khaana Chahiye happened. But parallelly, on the social side of things, I was very much always interested in doing some social work. So it came very naturally to me. Because I was born in the family that I was born in, charity came very naturally. We had very limited means from where we came, but I would still see my parents still do what they could do. Post that, we would have the church youth group, and we would go and clean the beach before it really became a cool thing to do. But then, while I was doing these things, I would ask myself the question as to, is this the most efficient way of essentially solving the problem? Post that, I used the RTI. I was one of the first people to use the RTI in Mumbai, because Mumbai had its RTI Act in, Maharashtra had its RTI Act in 2003. The country got in 2005, and we were able to get the BMC respond to civic grievances, essentially get people together. And a lot of things worked, a lot of things didn't work. My first success in that sense was when there was a garbage bin, and that garbage bin was always there. We didn't know how the garbage bin came there. We filed an RTI, we realized that the garbage bin wasn't always there, it was outside the MLA's house. The MLA won. he didn't want the garbage bin outside his house, so he shifted it to the main Irla market. Now, we filed complaints. We filed, like, we had learned something like formal letter writing. At least I had learned it in school. I think all of you all learned it too. So I used a few letters with the BMC. It didn't seem to work. We followed up. We followed up with complaint letters. We followed up with people going there, and we were told that nothing actually happens. But with collective informed assertion over a period of time, we were finally able to shift the garbage bin. That was my first so-called win of sorts. Post that, we had the Keenan Ruben murders. There were two boys in Amboli. I don't know how many of you all remember this case. It was pretty famous. So a lot of people thought I had died. But jokes apart, these two boys were essentially standing up for somebody who was molested. Somebody in their group was molested, and they stood up to that, and they essentially got killed. And Valerian Uncle reached out to us. We were by then a group of people who were already doing some interesting stuff from time to time, essentially getting the government to respond, getting greater civic engagement, greater civic participation. So Uncle reached out to us and said something needs to be done. Despite the despair, we soldiered on. We were able to launch the Zero Tolerance campaign against sexual harassment. It is the first major campaign which called for the amendment of the Anti-Sexual Harassment Act. And within a year, we were successful enough to amend the IPC in Maharashtra and amend Section 354, which basically meant that prior to that amendment, anyone could molest a woman and you could get a bail in the police station. We were able to change that just by the momentum of this particular case. Subsequent to that, we were able to get a conviction, which a lot of people thought was difficult. So the perpetrators are now convicted for life. That was the Zero Tolerance campaign. Around this time, also was voter registration, which was something again very close to me. The Jagore campaign, you would have heard of it. So the Jagore campaign is my campaign. We were successfully able to register 6 lakh first-time voters in Maharashtra and Gujarat. Post that, the first meeting of the India Against Corruption happened on my terrace, and I think the rest is history. But again, me and my team were very much key in bringing the people out on the streets and organizing. And then in the 2017 elections, again, we, Swaraj and myself, were part of the Litmus Test project, which became the first initiative to ever increase Mumbai's voting percentage. For the first time in 70 years, we were able to increase it by 13%. It happened. Again, this assumption that Mumbai is an apolitical city is not true. As long as you're able to run a good campaign, get people involved, people will respond, and we were able to demonstrate that. So all this happened, and parallelly, we were folding up my previous startup, and I was thinking of what to do next when COVID happened. And when COVID happened, I think a lot of things happened. On day one, I remember reaching out to Swaraj and my co-founders, Rakesh, Anek, Pathik, Neeti, and a host of us. And we just said that something needs to be done, because a lot of people were reaching out to us that people are hungry and that people are not getting food. And none of us, despite the fact that we had done a lot of public-spirited work, we didn't really have experience as to how do you tackle a once in a 200-year pandemic with so much of uncertainty, with us not really knowing how to go about things, because there's no precedent in that sense. So on day one, we made just 1,200 meals, and we said, okay, let's go on the Western Express Highway. And we went to the Western Express Highway, and I remember the first family that we met, the first thing that I asked them was, when have you had your last meal? And their response was that it's been 3 days. But while I was giving them that meal, they very interestingly told me, no, you give us later, but there is a family at that side of the road with children there, why don't you give it first? Give them first. And I think that really touched me, because if they could do charity, despite not having anything, we certainly, with all the privilege and all the ability to mobilize resources, can certainly do something. So we said, okay, the problem is much bigger than what we imagined to be, and something needs to be done. We were able to first start distributing these cooked meals on Mumbai's highways. Post that, as the lockdown extended, because quite honestly, we just thought that this was just like a stopgap 2 or 3 week or maximum 1 month sort of an initiative. But as the lockdown extended, as the pandemic progressed, a lot of people from slum clusters started reaching out to us that, hey, we're hungry too. And remember, the slum clusters at this point of time were essentially containment zones. You also had a lot of these people who were daily wage earners, a lot of people who were staying there but didn't have their own kitchens. They would eat at some local dhaba, or they had to pay their monthly rent. And imagine, your life just stops. And the lockdown wasn't as interesting as it was to us in the middle class, right? We could have maybe watched Netflix, or maybe engaged with our family, or did everything that we didn't really have time for. But for the poor, it was really life and death, because they had exhausted all money, they had exhausted whatever little savings that they had, and we started catering to these slum clusters. Now, because we were able to build up a team and we were able to narrate a story, we said, okay, can we, on the demand side of things, can we quantify this demand? Where is it coming from? Whom is it coming from? And on the supply side of things, we said, okay, we don't know how exactly should we, go about production of food, because none of us had experience. We had some restaurateurs, so we said, okay, let's try and build a network of unused kitchen capacity across all these restaurants. These restaurants exist, they know how to cook, they know how to maintain hygiene. And despite a lot of odds, people didn't have access to passes. This was the time that the police was just cracking down, so you also had to fix the supply side of things. But till date, we were able to serve about 71 lakh meals. 71 lakh cooked meals. Post that, the pandemic progressed, and then we had the migrant worker crisis. You had people literally from these containment zones really walk away. Imagine an entire segment of the population saying that we don't feel safe here. We somehow feel abandoned. And they were literally walking on the road. I remember we immediately set up our relief operations at Thane, at Vashi, at Dahisar. These are the ingress-egress points to the major highways in Mumbai. And it was really heartbreaking to see really an entire group of people, segment of people saying that we don't feel safe, whatever their experience was. And many of them were trudging back. I remember meeting young people who had bought a cycle and expected to cycle all the way to Orissa, to West Bengal. So we said, okay, we need to do something. And the good part was, no matter what challenge this pandemic threw at us, we were able to circumvent that. We were able to look at this entrepreneurially. And post that, because we were working with the government, we realized that while the BMC has intent, they don't have capacity. So we helped them initially towards their food distribution to make it more efficient. Post that, when the Shramik Express train started, the BMC reached out to us saying, can you take over 3 railway stations, VT, Kurla and Bandra, and can you support the migrant workers? Because remember, these Shramik Express trains didn't have any kitchen. They didn't have any pantry. So where do you expect people to buy food from? Their journey back home, maybe 2 days, maybe 3 days, maybe more. So we were able to adopt these 3 stations, and I can proudly say we were able to support 6.5 lakh workers across 284 trains. All this happened in lockdown 1. In lockdown 2, we became a little more smart in the sense that we were able to understand that cooked meals is not the most efficient way of solving the problem. Many people have the apparatus to cook, so can we give grocery kits to people? Because that's also a much more efficient way of distributing food. Till date, we were able to distribute approximately 71,000 family grocery kits, which is almost a grocery kit of 18 kgs worth of food, which will subsist a family for about 2 weeks. Post that, we also realized that rather than giving contracts to commercial kitchens, can we basically give a contract to community kitchens? Can we incentivize the community to itself try and solve the problem by generating some employment there? And we were able to run 3 community kitchens, out of which 2 are functional. One in Kurla is run by women self-help groups. One in Ulhasnagar, where Ruben and Bhumika are also part of that initiative. Is run by Dr. Yoga Nambia, who is again the first transgender PhD in her community, and it's run by a transgender collective, and it also has members who are former commercial sex workers. Along with these 2 community kitchens, we are able to serve about 1,800 meals a day. All this happened during the lockdown. The reason why we were able to scale was we were collaborative. We were able to build an enabling ecosystem, and most importantly, we were able to convert this initiative into a citizens movement, where we were able to create this network of on-ground organizations. Our biggest learning is that during the lockdown, while we worked with the government, there is no data. If you even ask the simple question as to where are the hungry people in Mumbai, I mean, how many people in Mumbai are hungry, where are they, and what is the government doing to satiate their hunger? There are no answers to that. The best answer that we got was just 10,000 people, which is some survey taken many years ago. So all of us at Khaana Chahiye have come up with something called the hunger map, which is still a work in progress, where we are trying to make it functional, so that people can visualize the problem. We realize that half the time people can't even visualize the problem. So if we are able to create a hunger map and map microclusters of those in extreme need, we can help people visualize the problem. Because people can visualize the problem, people can engage with the problem, and ultimately this data can be used for last mile delivery. Presently, we are working on the Zero Hunger project, where we are trying to basically get communities to take responsibility of the underprivileged in their own community. I mean, many a times we find communities take ownership of the public asset without taking ownership of the public itself, right? I mean, if a housing society can take control of a park and can maintain a park, then why can't they not do something for the poor in their neighborhood, right? And that's our primary vision. Post that, through the Zero Hunger project, we intend to ensure that all of Mumbai's destitute in the next 1 year will have access to ration cards. Because again, while speaking to people, we realize that most people don't have ration cards, and the reason why they don't have ration cards is because they don't have an address. But there are GRs where you're allowed to have a ration card, where your address is mapped to the nearest street light. So we're trying to implement that, and again, work out a replicable model for urban hunger. Because in Mumbai, you don't have a crisis management infrastructure. Crisis management infrastructure doesn't mean just floods, the way we in Mumbai are accustomed to looking at it. So all these things are not unique to Mumbai. They exist in London, they exist in New York, where you have soup kitchens. We are trying to see that can we have a functional crisis management infrastructure in Mumbai, where we actually have community kitchens as basically the touch points for last mile beneficiaries. So that's where we are. But before this, and most importantly, I'd like to specially acknowledge my co-founder Swaraj. Because in 2 lockdowns, we were able to raise almost 8.5 crore rupees online. And that happened because we created an enabling environment. And this is not the corporate sponsors and everybody else. We were able to do this because we were able to bring this enabling ecosystem together. And finally, I'd just like to end with my most favorite quote, which is what something that Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan says. That a mosquito is more socialist than Karl Marx. It makes no distinction between the rich or the poor, right? Whether you sit in your air-conditioned car or the urchin on the road, it will bite both equally. So unless and until you don't relate to somebody else's problem, it will sooner or later come to bite you. That's what democracy is. That's what it is. It's enlightened self-interest. And finally, as Dr. JP says, that I don't believe in a God, but I certainly believe in a sin. And that sin, which is totally unacceptable, is avoidable suffering and unutilized potential. Just look at the world around you. We look at hunger as avoidable suffering. We look at hunger as unutilized potential. And I think using smart technology, using the best talent, using empathy, we can actually get our state, our market, and our society to come together to solve this problem. Thank you so much for having us.